Rishi Sunak might soon be out of a job, so perhaps with an eye on his next one, he's been using his time in Downing Street to network with high net worth individuals. And you don't get much higher than this.
I think we are seeing the most disruptive force in history here. Where we have for the first time, we will have for the first time something that is smarter than the smartest human. And that, it's hard to say exactly what that moment is, but there will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything. So I don't know if that makes people comfortable or uncomfortable. That's why I say if you wish for a magic genie, that gives you any wishes you want, and there's no limit. You don't have those three wish limit nonsense. You just have as many wishes as you want. It's both good and bad. One of the challenges in the future will be, how do we find meaning in life if you have a magic genie that can do everything you want? I do think it's hard. When there's new technology, it tends to usually follow an S curve. In this case, we're going to be on the exponential portion of the S curve for a long time, and you'll be able to ask for anything. It won't be, and we won't have universal basic income. We'll have universal high income. So in some sense, it'll be somewhat of a leveler or an equalizer, because really, I think everyone will have access to this magic genie. And you'll be able to ask any question. It'll certainly be good for education. It'll be the best tutor you could, and the most patient tutor. Sit there all day. But there will be no shortage of goods and services. We'll be an age of abundance.
That conversation between Rishi Sunak and Elon Musk followed a summit on AI safety hosted by the Prime Minister. My question for you, though, Aaron, Elon Musk, to me, seemed to be summarizing your book, Fully Automated Luxury Communism. Do you think he's a convert?
Well, I don't know about that. I know that Grimes, the mother of his child, is. She was seen reading it by somebody I know. She also posted the audiobook onto her Instagram. It is funny for me, like I get belittled by sort of nobody's at the Observer, and then I have quite senior people at Facebook or whatever, big tech companies reach out and say, I love your book, it's fantastic. Anyway, that's just the way the world works. But the good news is that people like Rishi Sunak are so supine, they'll do and think whatever the American bigwigs tell them. So I'm very happy when actually, like I say, people in the US take it seriously, because almost a process of osmosis, people in Britain who aren't particularly radical will start saying, yeah, that's a really clever idea. Yeah, that's correct. Because they just imitate what the Americans say. They've been doing that since the 40s. In terms of what he said there, the goods and services being more abundant than ever before. That's correct. Goods and services will be made more productively with less human labor over time. That is the trend. More and more goods and services made more and more efficiently with less and less human labor forever. The problem, therefore, is, Michael, that how do people buy them? So you have all these wonderful goods and services being made more efficiently than ever before, but of course, with the diminishing component of human labor, well, given that people buy the goods and services with wages they get from selling their labor, jobs, you have a problem of what's called underconsumption or demand in economic parlance. So one solution, of course, is UBI. It's interesting, he's explicitly saying that a UBI would be part of that. I personally don't think that's needed in really the medium to short term. But the reality of automation and AI at the moment, and really for the next 15, 20, 25, 30 years, is that actually, he said the S curve, what it's going to do is create a J curve, like a hockey stick. It's going to exacerbate inequality, both regional and between individuals, global too. Already, California gets around 50% of venture capital across the whole United States. With AI, that concentration of VC, big money, would be even more. Imagine big tech over the last 30 years, now times it by God knows what. With regards to geopolitics, there was a great paper out by PricewaterhouseCoopers. I think $15 trillion worth of value is going to be created between now and 2035. Almost all of that, about 75% of it's going to China or the US with regards to AI. Huge amounts of value captured by these two AI superpowers, in the words of Kai-Fu Lee, who was heading up Google's operations in China before it closed. So that means major problems with regards to regional inequality within countries, individual inequality, which is already bad enough, and of course, global inequality. with many countries and regions not benefiting from this technology. So there are huge problems, huge challenges. And one of my major misgivings around people obsessed with the singularity, what if it becomes sentient, existential risk? I'm happy to discuss all of that. We talked about that actually with somebody, Ian Hogarth, who's now Rishi Sunak's, he's heading up the AI task force, very smart guy. I talked about all that with Ian. I'm happy to talk about it. But the major challenge with regards to AI over the next, like I say, 15, 25, 30 years is going to be what it does to inequality. That's the major challenge. If you look at what big tech did to the high street, look what Amazon did to your local high street over the last 25 years. Now imagine what AI is going to do to not the blue collar jobs, that when people think about automation, for a long time we thought, oh, well, manufacturing. No, white collar jobs, information intensive, repetitive jobs. Think accountancy, legal services, parts of medical healthcare, radiology, administrative work, consultancy. That doesn't mean all those jobs disappear, but many tasks within those jobs disappear. Therefore, you need far fewer accountants, people in legal services, medical support staff, consultants. So you're going to see less and less people needed in these massive sectors. And of course, the standout industry for all of this is vehicles. People that drive for a living constitute huge numbers of people in the labor market in both this country and the United States. Now, once you have self-driving cars, which is a form of machine learning, that means millions of people in the US no longer have a job. Is this happening next year? No. Is this happening in a decade's time? I don't think so. Is it going to happen? I think it's probably inarguable that at some point self-driving cars will be safer than ones driven by human beings. At which point, if there's a moral argument at all, it's about not allowing people to drive. Because bear in mind, Michael, 30,000 people die every year because of car crashes in the US, car accidents. 30,000 people die a year. If all of a sudden you're in a situation where you say, well, if we have self-driving cars, only 5,000 people die, you have a pretty strong moral case to not allow people to drive. So lots of jobs are going to go. The question is, without an attendant politics of redistribution, at the very best, you're going to see crises of, like I say, under consumption, demand. At the very worst, you're going to see the kinds of inequality which, frankly, are politically unmanageable and which will test our political and economic systems to their very limit.
Let's look at one more moment from that conversation between Sunak and Musk. So a journalist in the audience asked Rishi Sunak how to get more people starting innovative businesses. Sunak, in response, talked about maths education. He loves that topic, attracting high-skilled immigrants, and what he called pro-innovation regulations. But he also said this.
The thing that is tougher is the thing that Elon talked about, which is culture, right? It's how do you transpose that culture from places like Silicon Valley across the world, where people are unafraid to give up the security of a regular paycheck to go and start something and be comfortable with failure. You talked about that a lot. I think you talked about it more when you were playing games, right? But like, you've got to be comfortable failing and knowing that that's just part of the process. And that is it's a tricky cultural thing to do overnight, but it's an important part of, I think, creating that kind of environment.
You know what makes it easier to take risks? To think maybe I can leave my regular employment, my regular job, and take a risk with some innovation, with a new business. A welfare state. If it fails, if you're Rishi Sunak and you start something and it fails, that's fine because you're married to a billionaire. Your parents are pretty rich. They sent you to one of the poshest private schools in the country. If you're Elon Musk, you can also take those risks. His dad was also a very rich man in South Africa, wasn't he? I think he owned diamond mines or something. So you got two guys who both came from very privileged backgrounds, and they're saying the reason why we don't have more entrepreneurs is culture. There's a cultural issue here. Maybe there's an economic issue, which is that people can't afford to, right? It's very, very hard to take risks unless you have some security to fall back on. We had a Swedish-style welfare state. It'd be much easier, to go out and say, okay, I'm going to take a risk. If it fails, I won't necessarily. If it fails, you expect some risk. I won't necessarily be able to live a luxurious lifestyle, but I'm not going to get kicked out of my home where rent is £900, right? We have not set up a society where you can take risks. We haven't even set up a society where, if someone wants to improve their opportunities later in life by taking an adult education course, they can, because they wouldn't possibly be able to pay their rent if they're not working 2 jobs throughout the week. So this is why it's just very, very galling, let's say, to hear Rishi Sunak and Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who had a very rich father, and the UK Prime Minister married to a billionaire who also had very rich parents, say, you know what? People need to take more risks. It doesn't matter that, you start a business, you fail. Yeah, you might not be as rich as you were going to be, but you're still going to be able to fall back on your incredibly rich dad. Not everyone has that luxury, and it's not a cultural problem.